Welcome to the Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Today we are talking about everything from new sanctions and Uber restrictions to NFL cheerleaders and the Academy Awards. Those stories and many more in less than 10 minutes. Plus, hang out after today's news for a bonus interview. We are talking about Demi Lovato's overdose, the drug that likely saved her life, and myths versus facts about addiction. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Thursday, August 9th. You ready? Let's do this. The Trump administration says new sanctions against Russia will be coming soon. Why? British and U.S. officials believe Russia is to blame for poisoning a former Russian spy and his adult daughter in the UK. Remember that? They were poisoned with a rare nerve agent back in March. The Guardian reports the move would put restrictions on sensitive tech being sent from the U.S. to Russia. Fox News says it could impact hundreds of millions of dollars worth of trade with Russia, and more severe measures could come later. For now, the sanctions just announced will go into effect later this month. More trade tensions between the world's two largest economies, the U.S. and China. Now Reuters reports China is putting tariffs of 25% on $16 billion worth of U.S. goods going into China, from fuel and cars to steel and medical equipment. And this is all in retaliation, because guess when these new tariffs will go into effect? The very same day, later this month, that the U.S. plans to start tariffs on Chinese goods, and for all the same amounts. Chinese leaders have said any tariffs the U.S. put in place, China will match them and do the exact same thing. Chinese leaders say the U.S. is just being unreasonable. President Trump, though, is trying to use the tariffs as a negotiating tool, and he said China is unfair when it comes to trade. And yes, this all affects U.S. companies, from farmers to even big corporations like Apple. Apple CEO recently said the looming trade war with China could take its toll soon and mean higher prices on things like iPhones. She'll likely become the first Muslim woman ever elected to Congress. Rashida Tlaib won the Democratic primary in Michigan this week, and she'll only face write-in candidates in November, so she's expected to win. She'll take the spot of a congressman who resigned because of sexual harassment accusations. There are 2 Muslim men in Congress already, but Tlaib is set to become the first Muslim woman. In fact, Time reports a record number of women were nominated by a major party for Congress and for governor. A New York congressman is now charged with insider trading. CBS News says he's accused of getting inside info about a biotech company and then helping his son make stock trades, which is not allowed. Representative Christopher Collins and his family members involved all pleaded not guilty. For now, Collins still plans to run again for a seat in the November midterm elections. Well, the decision is in. New York City is officially putting limits on Uber and Lyft, and it's the first U.S. city to do something like this. Council members voted yesterday to limit the number of ride-hailing cars on city streets for a year, and then study the industry in that time. It also says the city can set a minimum pay for Uber and Lyft drivers. Uber and Lyft, of course, are not so happy about this. They've argued this will lead to longer wait times and less reliable service. City council members say, not true, that too many for-hire cars are just causing more traffic on the road. The big question is, will any other cities follow suit with new regulations? In California, wildfires are still a huge problem, and literally huge, with the largest wildfire in state history happening now. The good news? The AP reports firefighters are finally able to say they're making some progress on it, but still it won't be fully under control until at least September. The fire in Northern California, which is just north of San Francisco, is the size of Los Angeles now. It started 2 weeks ago. All right, some other things people may be talking about today. NFL history is being made this season. For the first time, male cheerleaders will be on the sidelines. CNN says the LA Rams accepted 2 guys on the cheerleading team, and the New Orleans Saints will have 1. A few changes are coming to next year's Oscars. The most talked about, a new category for Best Popular Film. The Hollywood Reporter says not everyone is so thrilled with this idea, and some are asking what exactly makes a movie popular. Are we talking box office or budget? Will movies even want this new title? Actor Rob Lowe even tweeted, quote, "The film business passed away today with the announcement of the Popular Film Oscar." The Academy says all the details are still being worked out and change always comes with comments. It's probably happening because the ratings this year were a record low. Another change just announced, a shorter live show, no more than 3 hours. The next Academy Awards are February 24th, 2019. Just a few more short things to note in the world of entertainment. First up, TechCrunch reports you can expect a discounted bundle option when Disney's new video streaming service comes out next year. That is, if you get all of Disney's streaming options, including the new one, Hulu, and ESPN+. Disney already owns ESPN, and it will own 60% of Hulu once its deal with 21st Century Fox goes through. Also, if you're a fan of Apple Music, Mashable says Verizon is teaming up with Apple to offer 6 months of Apple Music free of charge to any Verizon Unlimited customers. And finally, People Mag says country superstar Carrie Underwood is pregnant with her second child. And that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where I ask a few questions of a different expert every Thursday after the news. If you are a longtime listener, then you know I used to call this 3-Question Thursday, but let's be honest, I usually ask more like 5 questions. So I'm now calling it Thing to Know Thursday. And the thing to know today is about opioid addiction, specifically singer Demi Lovato's overdose on July 24th, an overdose that came only a month after she released her single, Sober.
Mama, I'm so sorry, I'm not sober anymore.
So today we are talking about the drug that reportedly saved her life, what she's likely been through physically, and some myths and facts about addiction. My guest today is Jessica Hulsey Nickel. She is founder and CEO of the Addiction Policy Forum. It's a national nonprofit. She's hosted forums on addiction for former presidents, presidential candidates, and lawmakers. She's been featured on several media outlets and has personal experience as well. Her own parents struggled with heroin addiction. So here is my conversation with Jessica Hulsey Nickel. Hi, Jessica. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I first want to start with why someone relapses or overdoses. And I think you've said before that it's not a failure. What do you mean by that?
Exactly. Relapse is not a failure, and we should not be attaching blame or stigma or any anger towards our loved ones, our patients that are struggling with addiction. But this is part of the pathway, and it means that something is missing. It's a signal to add an element, to re-engage in treatment, to increase or enhance recovery support. It's a moment to wrap that person up with more services, not a moment for anger or stigma.
One of the things that's been pretty unique about Demi Lovato is she's pretty open about it. She has her song Sober where she talks about relapsing. Do you think Demi Lovato, again, being so open about it, is helping to change that stigma a bit?
I believe so. I think Demi being honest and open and so forthcoming about her struggles with addiction, about relapse, just how well loved she is by so many, I think makes this a moment to educate and maybe build understanding in our entire culture about what this illness means when it hits your family. This is a serious health issue. It is a brain disorder. It affects 2 really important parts of your brain, and we need to have long-term care, much longer than sort of this myth of 28 days or being done in 2 weeks. This is a long-term chronic health issue that we need to have really, really thoughtful support around our patients to make sure they can manage it.
And to that point, she wrote in her Instagram post that this isn't something that necessarily fades away with time.
It doesn't. She is incredibly accurate about that. We've learned a lot about this as a health condition. The care that you might need might change over time, but this is a lifelong challenge that our patients and their loved ones are going to have to manage and make sure that they're engaging the right treatment supports.
There's been some talk of Narcan, and reports say that she was given this and it may have saved her life. Can you explain what Narcan is, and is it being used around the country?
Yeah, so Narcan, the medicine is called naloxone, is a medicine that is FDA approved and safe that we have had for decades that reverses an opioid overdose. It basically is a medicine that goes in there and kicks that opioid out of the receptors in your brain, the parts that are restricting your breathing, which is why we lose people at an increasing rate to opioid overdoses. So it's a safe medication. We have expanded greatly how we make this more available to communities and families. And people, particularly those that have a loved one with an opioid use disorder, should be trained in how to administer naloxone or Narcan. We should have it available. We should talk openly about where it's held at the house or being stored at the house, and make sure our communities are accessing it with increased frequency. Someone
who has gone through this, their body has gone through a lot. Can you speak to that at all?
So, a patient who has had an overdose reversed, who's had Narcan or naloxone administered, and they have an overdose reversed, that puts you into active withdrawal. And I've had family members who've struggled with opioid use disorder, and they've said that withdrawal is a very physically uncomfortable and very painful thing to go through. So, there's lots of health consequences and difficulties on how you manage that, and making sure that you have healthcare involved, and know that that's putting you in a pretty difficult place physically. My mom used to say that withdrawal is like the flu and food poisoning combined together times 2 million. So we need to make sure that those that have had an overdose reversed have the healthcare systems and the care that they need to manage their withdrawal symptoms, and that we use that as an intervening moment to get them engaged in treatment, because we know that those that have had a non-fatal overdose are at an increased risk for another overdose. So this is a warning sign that we need to act now to make sure we get them the help they need.
You mentioned one common misconception that, treatment can be 2 weeks and you're done. Is there any other common misconception that you feel people need to know?
Oh, absolutely. Some of the myths that are out there, one are this myth of the rock bottom, that we should wait for the worst thing that could happen to our loved ones or ourselves, and it'll be this magical, mythical moment where we're going to seek help or treatment. The reality is that, like any other health condition, this disease worsens over time. So the sooner you can intervene, the better. To have the pieces of screening and intervention early is so much more helpful for the patient and the entire family network and community. So we really need to shift that to early intervention.
Important topic, good information. Thank you so much.
Thank you for talking today.
And remember, you can always read more about this topic and today's guest in today's show notes. That's also where you'll find links to all the news stories we talked about in this episode. From the homepage of thenewsworthy.com, just click episodes in the upper right-hand corner and then find today's date. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends if you enjoyed it. The Newsworthy is ready for you by 4 a.m. every weekday, so I'll be back with more news tomorrow. Have a great day.